E46 325i update. If I can get this damn thing open. Alright. So last thing I did off camera was get the exhaust manifolds, both of them, off. And so the procedure pretty much for that is just going to be, you're going to have your first one here for cylinder 1, 2, 3, and you'll unbolt it, wiggle it out. You do not have to remove the O2 sensors to get them out. So unbolt them, move it over, it'll stop kind of like right here and sit there, and then you can have access to unbolt the back one. Kind of a pain in the ass. 4 bolts down there, next to transmission area, and then you're all good. You can wiggle them out. I believe the back one came out first, but you won't be able to get the front one out without wiggling the back and kind of just playing with it a little bit. Also, you're going to pull the starter out, and if you don't know, the starter on the E46 is underneath the intake manifold, which is a pain in the ass to get off. So you want to make sure your starter is good and working good, because you will not want to do this job multiple times. But the first thing is going to be a 13 mil on the positive cable for the starter, so we'll take that off and then we'll get the 2 bolts out. Okay, so I wanted to get a close-up of this area. So there are 2 positive cables on the starter here, okay, and you get that off with the 13 millimeter nut that sits here. If you don't want to lose the nut, you can just go ahead and screw it back on, just finger tight, okay. And then you are going to need a flex head ratchet. I'm using a snap-on ratchet, and you're going to need it because it's going to need to be able to turn. You're kind of going to get at the bolt at an angle. So there is the top bolt over here, and you want to fish this in here however you can get it. I've already got the bolt cracked, but as you can see, it kind of just takes a little bit of finesse, and then you can access the top one. Probably not the most fun thing to do. I imagine if it's tight enough, you might be able to just get the socket on. I mean, if it's loose enough, you might be able to get the socket on and twist it with your finger, which I'm currently doing right now. So yes, it is possible to do this without going from underneath, at least for that bolt. And now the second bolt for the starter is gonna be over here, and this heater hose is kind of in the way, blocking a big chunk of view here. But the second bolt is most definitely hidden, and again, using the same kind of flexible head ratchet, you'll get it down in there and you'll be able to turn this. It's just quite a pain to get to, and it's really hard to see. I've already got the coolant drain, so for me, I'll probably remove this heater hose that's all up in my way. But you might not have to do that at all. And this bolt may be easier to access from the transmission tunnel. Maybe a little bit easier. Right now I'm trying to stay on top, so if I can do that, then that's what I'll do. But it is kind of a pain, but yeah, this is not very DIY friendly, this whole process. Anyway, I'll work on getting that out, see if there's a better way that I can access this and help you guys out, find out which schools we're using. This is an E14 torque socket, for those wondering. Alright, bottom bolt for the starter is out. You can see it's definitely wiggly, definitely loose. You want to break both bolts with the E14 socket, specific socket, and then you can use a 10 millimeter ratcheting wrench to kind of back them out. Or if it's like the bottom one like I did, I ended up just using my finger, so probably can't see it too well. I do have my ratcheting wrench right here, and I've got it on this bolt, and now I'm just kind of backing it out the rest of the way. But you don't want to crack this thing with the 10 mil flex ratchet. not even a flex ratchet, but you don't want to break it with the ratchet, because you could just strip it. Use the E14 socket, short socket, no extension. It's made by Titan. I believe it's like AutoZone brand, something like that. But anyway, we're getting this out, and then you're just gonna have to get the solenoid wire here. I believe it's an 8mm. It's this little black wire on the starter, and then you'll be able to remove your starter. All right, finally, after a long fight. So you got 13mm, 8mm on the right, 10mm on the left there. At least, you know, this is holding it, the orientation of my hand, but there are 3 wires going to the starter, and you'll be able to get it out. So now that that is over with, I'll be able to pop in there and check out the flywheel and everything. But the main reason why I'm getting that out, like I said, is because the transmission is going to be coming off. So I'm going to put this on the shelf along with the rest of the parts. This will be getting cleaned up and just tested just to make sure everything's good, but I wasn't having any issues with it. But if you're suspecting you're having issues, you might as well just go ahead and change this now if you're doing a job like this. Alright, last couple hours I've been hating my life, but sorry, the GoPro doesn't really have much lighting. There you go. So there's gonna be 3 bolts on the drive shaft. You could take out the other ones if you wanted to. I guess we still have to figure out if we have to or not. But anyway, they're 19s. You want to put a 19 socket on the front, put a 19 open-ended wrench on the back, and you can sneak through this transmission mount here and do that. And my transmission mounts look good, so I'm glad. But anyway, get those bolts out, put them aside. Then you're gonna have your slave cylinder. It's gonna be 2 13s, 2 13mm bolts, and they're gonna be right up in here. Okay, take those out, slide your slave cylinder out. There it is. No fluid should be leaking from that. If it is fluid leaking, then it's probably a bad slave. Next, then we're gonna start working on getting some of the bolts cracked while it's still mounted in the subframe here, in the mount here, while it's still mounted. So I've already cracked these loose. You just go around the transmission, crack some of them loose. The one top left over here, over in this corner area here, is the biggest pain in the butt to do. You're gonna want to, it's the one right below the starter bolt. It's the E14 one, and it's just stupid. Make sure you're flush. Do whatever you gotta do. Put the socket on there first, and try and, you know, wiggle yourself your extension on there. I'm using a pretty good extension to go ahead and get some clearance away from that, and it ends up putting me right near in this area here, so that way I have enough space, so that way my hand's not right at the firewall. But I found out that that's what I needed to do, so that's what I did. And now I'll focus on getting this subframe mount. I'll take the bolts out of the transmission first, and then I'll drop this subframe mount. I've actually only got one more bolt here in the subframe mount. It's a 13mm. It's gonna be this one right here, and I'll get the jack under and support it, and hopefully we can get the drive shaft completely separated at that point. If we have to drop it from the other side, then I guess that's what I'll do, is totally remove the drive shaft, but I'm hoping not. Yeah, and then you're gonna have a couple sensors on the transmission. You should be good to separate it and drop it after that. You know, just take your time and be patient. I just spent probably longer than I like to admit, probably, getting this out. Granted, it's my first time, and the BMW has some real interesting ways that they, you know, procedures that you had to do to get this out. But ultimately had to drop the exhaust, the heat shield, drop the drive shaft in order to drop the drive shaft, because there's a little mount underneath, not underneath, but underneath the exhaust, really, in between the heat shield and the exhaust. But anyways, anyway, got that, and I'm just glad that it's out. Got my little bearing there, and yeah, this is kind of where we're at. So I need to assemble my hoist. Hold on. Alright, I need to assemble my hoist so that way I can get this engine hoisted up, get these motor mounts undone, and then lift this out. This thing keeps on flying. But really it doesn't matter anyways, because this is going to get hot tanked and resurfaced, just in case it did any damage to the head when the head gasket was not doing so good. From what it looks like there's a motor mount here and a motor mount on this side down here, and then really it looks like the transmission mount kind of holds it all together on top of that. So it looks like it's just two mounts. It could be wrong, but I don't see anything here. I haven't seen anything on the back side for the transmission, but I'm just so glad that this is finally out. And let me crawl underneath. Hold on, let me use this. Let's take a ride. So if I wasn't pulling the engine, which I don't absolutely have to, but I'm so damn close at this point, just getting all this other stuff out of the way. You know, here's my pressure plate. I could just do my clutch, but that's not what we're gonna do. We're gonna pull this out, clean it all. Got a little bit of a leak, oil leak going on, probably the oil pan, maybe possibly the rear main seal. I'll check that out once I get closer to that time. It really does look like it's just yeah, it really does just look like two motor mount bolts. Anyway, I've got to get the engine hoisted up before I even think about doing any of that. So let's discuss this. This is also kind of a pain in the ass to kind of get the procedure, how to get these shift linkages off. They're tucked up, out of the way. I mean, once you do it once, I could probably do this a lot quicker next time, but yeah. Anyway, go ahead and put my jack back. I had to lift the car up a little bit to get this out. And yes, I'm working by myself, getting this out, getting the transmission out and everything. So once I got all the bolts out and everything, I pulled the transmission back and I lowered it with my jack. I didn't use a transmission jack, I just used my regular jack. Pulled it back, lowered it a little bit, but the car wasn't high enough off the ground. The top of the transmission was actually hitting on the undercarriage, like right there, so I had to end up jacking it up a little bit. So that's kind of why it's up now. So let me go ahead and put this back down. Crunchy. So if you are doing it by yourself, so you can save your back, what I did was I put the back end of the transmission on where the linkages are and everything on this once I got it high enough, and then I kind of just lifted up only the front portion, and then it kind of just slid out and I pulled it from under this way. I don't know, that's just what I found to be easy, because this whole thing I'm just kind of doing myself. I don't have somebody here to help me. So next up, like I said, is going to be this, pulling the engine out, and yeah, and then probably mess with the wire harness more and get it situated and up out of the way so all this can clear. But probably the first thing I'll do once I get it hoisted is pull it forward a little bit, because we've got so much space here. Pull it forward, so that way we're not hitting anything up in here. But yeah, this thing is it's coming a long way.